Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us. I know we're a couple minutes behind, but we'll just give everyone a few more minutes to get into the Zoom room. All right, well, I'm going to get started, and if others join us as we get going, they'll be able to jump right in. My name is Misha Kirby. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Communications with the Community Foundation of Sarasota County, and I'm very glad to welcome all of you here today to learn about all our virtually learn about us and all the services and information that we offer to cause-driven nonprofit organizations, and so that you get to know our team better and their professional areas of work. So I think all of you are familiar with Zoom right now, but just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. So if you miss anything, you will be able to review it again, or also share with colleagues who may not have been able to attend today. There is a Q&A section to ask questions as we go throughout the process. We'll attempt to address them as we're all going, but some of us we're all juggling multiple screens. So if we miss anything, we'll follow up again at the end. So, as I mentioned, we're here to answer some key questions and want to tell you basically what is a community foundation. It's a very large market in this area. We want to tell you how we work with our nonprofit partners, how we might be a little bit different than others that are also in this region, and who you should talk with at the Community Foundation of Sarasota County and the best ways to reach us. So you're going to hear from this lovely group of people this afternoon. Joining me are Jay Young. He is our Vice President of Philanthropy, and he represents our donors and ensures their charitable giving is meeting their expectations and having really the greatest impact possible. Following him, we have Kirsten Russell, the Vice President of Community Impact. She also represents our donors, but truly our legacy donors who have entrusted the Community Foundation to invest their charitable gifts that go well into the future, that really make long-term generational change for our community. On her team is Angelica Hall, the manager of grants, who is key to lining up the evolving wishes of our donors and the needs that you, our nonprofit partners, have today. And the newest team member that we have is Renata Reeder. She is a Vice President of Knowledge and Equity. She joined the Community Foundation of Sarasota County this past spring in a new role that really takes the time to dig through all of the data that we have, also looking at the hard numbers of our community needs through other sources, and help ensure that where we can make the biggest difference in charitable giving, that we're really doing that. So before I turn it over to my other team members, real quickly, we just wanted to talk about what is a community foundation. We are a public charity, just like everyone else who's on this call. I think what distinguishes us is we get to work across all sorts of different sectors, and we're really focused on bringing people together, people and organizations, around really key issues that cross all of those sector lines. We do this a few different ways through immediate and long-term grant funding, as well as helping create initiatives, projects, or even networks where other organizations can work together and really make a difference. Sometimes you might see these in different sectors that might be unrelated at first glance, like the arts and healthcare, or animal welfare and mental health. You can go to the next slide, Matt. So as I mentioned, we're a community foundation, and we are very fortunate to live in a region that has several community foundations and many other different types of foundations. So we have a real local focus. We work with many different donors, and we provide services to nonprofits, whether that's classes, cohort groups, grants, of course, providing research and survey information about the nonprofit field, and also keeping up on the latest trends and differences in charitable giving. We also have many private foundations in this area, and really private foundations are supported by one family. They have a single purpose or maybe a few key issues that they're passionate about. And oftentimes there's an intersection between community foundations and private foundations. So as an example, I think many of you on the call today are aware of the Giving Challenge, and we are fortunately supported by the Patterson Foundation, a private foundation. And you'll also see various initiatives later in this presentation that show that there's multiple funders that we're working with to really make an overall impact in our community to improve the lives of everyone. So quite often, the team members of the Community Foundation of Sarasota County who unite some private and individual funders with our own initiatives is the philanthropy team. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jay Young to share more about his team's role in our work. Jay?
Great. Well, thank you, Misha, and good afternoon to you all. It's great to be part of this virtual event, and I really hope to get to know everybody on this call over time here. My role today is to help provide some additional information about community foundations broadly, as well as some specifics about the Community Foundation of Sarasota County, as well as the philanthropy team here at CFSC. Well, in terms of the philanthropy team, what we do here at the Community Foundation, we'll get into a little bit more detail about that, but think of my team as really being responsible for cultivating relationships, both with prospective donors, as well as stewarding our existing donors, and really trying to provide them those donor services to help them connect with different types of organizations within our community over time. I've been at the Community Foundation for about 6 months, so relatively new. I'm really lucky to have come in here to work with a really seasoned team of relationship management colleagues who have nice tenures here at the Community Foundation of Sarasota County and are constantly trying to add value to our donors. So that said, let's talk a little bit about the community foundations in general. And I thought it might be helpful to begin with this illustration on this page in front of you. So I realize it's a little bit simple, but it helps me get it through my head here. I do think it does provide a pretty good overview of the money flow at the Community Foundation. So certainly what we try to do is to be a resource for our caring donors and prospects who are really working hard to impact the community. We really want to understand the causes they support and enable them to make a charitable impact in our area. As Misha mentioned, we are a public charity, so donors who give during their lifetime do in fact get an immediate tax deduction for that contribution. The assets are then invested here at the Community Foundation. Depending on the timing and the type of fund, we see then grants and scholarships flow back into the community. So it's key here to learn a little bit about some of the funds that we do offer and community foundations broadly offer. So I want to take a quick second here and talk about the funds that our donors do utilize. You'll see that next to the blue arrow in the lower right-hand corner, and I do want to touch on each of these real quick. So first and foremost, you'll see donor advised funds. This is when a donor establishes and funds an account here at the Community Foundation, and the donor or somebody named by that donor makes grant recommendations on their own timeline to various charitable organizations. There's really no specific limitation there other than to give to other 501c3 public charities. And again, they are able to do that on their own timeline, which is a little bit different than what you might see with, say, a private foundation. This is, I think, donor advised funds is really the first things that people think of when they consider community foundations, but there's a lot beyond that. Second, I think real important are our field of interest funds. Now, this type of fund is directed to support specific areas of needs in the community that really have meaning to the donor. So for example, you might see a field of interest fund focused on education or arts or human services, et cetera. If you are a not-for-profit with that particular donor's field of interest, you could in fact see grants made from their field of interest fund. Scholarship funds, I think that's pretty straightforward. Those are funds that are established here at the Community Foundation to assist young people or adults wishing to further their education. Designated funds are also pretty popular at the Community Foundation. This type of fund actually supports specific organizations that the donors name right in their fund documents. So they're identifying the organizations that they want to support, and we include that right in the document, and those money flows out according to their wishes. And of course, future funds, that's real important. Those are for donors who are looking to include the Community Foundation in their estate plan. And during their lifetime, we work with them to structure that gift, which tends to fund once they do pass on. But once that event happens, the account is fully funded. That's really where the assets start going back into the community based on the type of fund that they've set up, as well as the timeline that they've come together to decide upon when they go ahead and fund that account. And finally, of course, I have to mention giving circles. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with these. That's really when individuals around the community really come together, pool their funds, and decide together where to give those assets. So it's a pretty cool, unique way to learn about, all together about the community needs, as well as more about philanthropy as they grow over time. So what exactly does a philanthropy team do? Pretty straightforward here. Again, we are trying to, of course, engage with our donors as well as new prospects, learn about their philanthropic objectives, and really try to help structure the correct fund and gift as seen on that previous page. Because of the fact that there's such financial and estate planning impacts of these gifts, we very often do work with their professional advisors. Think, estate planning attorney, accounting, financial planner, et cetera. Folks who are really helping those individuals with their long-term plans on the estate planning issues, et cetera. We then rely on us to help them structure that gift according to the donor's wishes. Excuse me. Of course, we do a lot of philanthropic investment planning. That's when we work really closely with individuals and families on their long-term philanthropic planning and what types of investments they'd like to make in the community. It's really fun to work with children and grandchildren of those families when individuals want to include those next generations and start building the next philanthropists in our community. So really think of us as a relationship managers. We're really trying to help navigate all the services that we have internally here at the community foundations for our donors. And of course, we are regularly out in the community. I'm sure you've bumped into us at different events, meetings, and so on around town. But again, we try to have that visibility. So certainly look forward to seeing you at those events as we get closer to season here. Lastly, how do we interact with nonprofits? I will say we rely very heavily on the information that you provide in the giving partner, as well as regular feedback from our community impact team. So I would say it's real important to make sure that those resources are up to date and keeping that direct line of communication open with community impact so that they can help share ideas with us and understand what's happening at your organizations. So at this point, it's been a pretty broad overview of community foundations in general. I did want to give you a snapshot of some of the facts and figures around the Community Foundation of Sarasota County. As you'll see in this slide here, at the end of our last fiscal year, our assets were just over $420 million. Now, I also thought it would be helpful to break down, look at the breakdown of those types of funds. And I'll admit, before I started here at the Community Foundation, I just associated donor advised funds with these types of organizations and figured that would be the largest bucket of assets. But that, in fact, is not the case. As you can see here, field of interest is the largest bucket. And those are, again, our donors who establish those types of funds either during their lifetime or upon their passing to really start getting those monies back out into the community. I also did want to touch real quick on agency funds. Those are funds that we actually manage for other nonprofits, including some of the folks on this line who keep their long-term assets in our corporate pool, really to take advantage of our investment committee expertise, our chosen investment managers, and really allowed smaller organizations to take advantage of extremely competitive pricing of a larger foundation. So again, we love taking that role, and please use this as a resource if that does come up. Now, on the next slide, you'll see what type of assets people donate to the Community Foundation. And as you can see here, it is in fact pretty wide ranging. Cash and securities, of course, are the most popular, but we do have a wide variety of assets that are included in our gift acceptance policy. So one thing I would note for everybody on the call here is this can be real important for you also. For example, if somebody approaches you with one of these more complex gifts that are listed on this page, perhaps you don't have the ability to accept that gift in-house, we can be a resource for you to help you clear that gift so that you can plan to work with those proceeds. So think as a partner in these circumstances, and if you do have some complex gifting strategies that come up, please reach out for resources here. So a couple of thoughts here before I wrap up. Again, with season being right around the corner here, I do want to remind you that donors cannot use their donor advised funds to bifurcate or to pay for the deductible portion of an event when they're attending your gala or sponsorships and so on. The IRS does not approve of those types of bifurcation payments. And the only thing that a donor could get out of that is what they consider incidental benefit. Now, of course, It's hard to define there, but think something like a book bag from NPR or something to that effect. Things like meals or attending the events, tickets to special events, those are all considered more than incidental benefits. So donors cannot use their donor advised funds for those types of contributions. And last but not least, I do want to say one thing that we always like to remind folks. First and foremost, don't worry about the tax reporting for contributions that you get from the Community Foundation. We handle all that tax reporting for our dollars, so you don't have to worry about grant receipts or tax language when you do receive a gift from the funds here. However, we do always recommend, if you're in the habit of doing a thank you note, even if you don't know that donor or have direct access to the donor, we always pass those thank you notes on to the individuals or donors, families involved with those gifts. So I want you to know that anything that you do get to here at the Community Foundation, we make sure gets into the proper hands. So I hope that gives you a brief overview here. Let's switch a little gears here. I would like to transition to the Community Impact team and right over to their leader, Kirsten Russell. Kirsten?
Thank you, Jay, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. I so wish that we could be in person, but I think we've all become very accustomed to Zoom. So we're happy to be able to meet with you in this platform. My name is Kirsten Russell, and I'm the Vice President of Community Impact. This slide shows you our team, and I am certain that you have had the pleasure of either meeting or Zooming or talking with many of these rock stars on a regular basis. In a few minutes, you're going to get to hear from Angelica Hull, who's our manager of grants, but you also see other familiar faces on this screen. Nicole Light, who's our education officer. She oversees many of our education investments and does a lot of work with our parent success program, which I'll go into a little bit in depth later. It's our 2-gen philosophy really at work in the community. Odie Mondi, I know many of you talk with her on a regular basis. She is our department coordinator. She gets involved in many of our grant making opportunities, as well as helping out with scholarships. Lindsay Masterson is our manager of scholarships and grants, and Kay Carrington is our scholarship specialist. While we won't delve into the details of our scholarship program, it is important to know that we have a very robust program. We have one of the largest scholarship programs in the state of Florida from community foundations. And this year we have granted out more than $2 million to support scholarships in our community. So it's a significant program, and these two are incredible at the way they work with all of our funds and all of our students and all of the education institutions in Florida and beyond. Our community impact is what we say powered by philanthropy. And today I'm going to walk you through and provide just a quick overview of our community impact strategy, some of our initiative work, and then I'll turn it over to Angelica to talk about our competitive grant cycles. Let's start by going back to Jay's comment about field of interest funds. You may recall that this is the largest piece of the pie, representing 24% of the funds that we are granting out into the community. A field of interest fund supports a specific area of interest defined by a donor. It can be as broad or narrow as they want it to be. So it can say to support education, or it can say to support students in Sarasota County. So there are lots of different ways those purposes are defined, and we are obligated to live out the legacy of those donors and make sure that the grants that we make adhere to those purposes. You're probably familiar with many of these funds since they're also named in the grant awards. And as we see here, about 63% of our discretionary grant making falls into human services and education. So that means that we are adhering to the purposes of those funds. And knowing this, we can go to the next slide here. It may not surprise you to hear that our philosophy is largely guided by this 2-generation approach, adopted from Ascend at the Aspen Institute. It's really a whole family approach. And as much as we're saying health and human services or human services, and education are such a significant part of our funds, we do weave this into education and environment and animals. And we're really looking at overall working to improve the lives of everyone in our community. A little more on the 2-gen approach. We'll just go back for a second if we can. The 2-gen approach builds on family well-being by intentionally and simultaneously working with children and adults in their lives together. We hear this described a lot of different ways in the community. It's overall the whole family approach. So we look at the whole child, the whole family, with the belief that that builds a better, whole, connected, and united community. This 2-gen mindset and model recognizes whole family units, however they define themselves, and serves to meaningfully engage parents and caregivers by designing policy and programs that affect them. We work with the families to solve problems. We ask you to work with the families also to solve those problems and provide access to resources, sharpen their skills and talents, and create experience and opportunities really for all families to reach their full potential and for our community to thrive economically and socially. This graphic here illustrates that continuum, the continuum of integrated services that support to move the whole family forward. Next slide. So what does this look like? It really looks like a lot of different wheels that and gears that really have to go together to provide a really cohesive community. So it's an individual, a family, or a community's well-being that really includes all of these areas: financial, social, mental aspects, as well as coordinated systems. The 2-gen approach has a very robust vision for family well-being, and it has identified essential experiences, supports, and resources that are really necessary for families to thrive. You see here social capital, which is really about connecting people and information to opportunities to give and opportunities to receive support. Early childhood education and development. We know that starting early with children and caring for our children in those earliest years has a tremendous return on investment. It's access to education and clear pathways in those post-secondary education years. It's looking at that K through 12 system, the basic system that our children come up through, making sure they have the resources in the schools that go beyond just providing them with those academic milestones that they need to meet, but it's the wraparound services, the access to mental health, which leads into that health and well-being, making sure that our community has access to healthcare, physical and behavioral health, improving opportunities. Economic assets, which is really about financial stability. It's about housing supports, transportation, and overall financial capacity. Other areas within our community impact work are and fall under initiatives. So we'll look at the next slide. These aspects of our 2-gen approach are really woven into most everything that we do. Here are some of the initiative work that we'd like to highlight for you. Many of you have heard about the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. This is a national campaign, and here in Sarasota and our 4-county area, we have the Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading that is really powered by the Patterson Foundation, and we're the lead partner for these efforts in Sarasota County. So it's definitely a collaborative community effort to help children read on grade level by 3rd grade. We focus on 3 primary areas for this: early learning, so before kindergarten; summer learning, we see this as a really tremendous opportunity to close the achievement gap; and parent engagement and success. Just like we looked at that graphic earlier, For our children to be successful, we need to be pouring into the parents and helping them realize their full potential as well. EdExplore SRQ. Hopefully many of you have heard of this and taken part in an exploration. EdExplore SRQ is a web-based platform that's powered by community partnerships. The web portal really showcases more than 250 offerings by local nonprofits, and it's a gateway to enriching hands-on experiences in the arts and education. For anyone who wants to look at that and participate in them, it's used in large part through Sarasota County by teachers and principals and parents to identify and discover experiential learning opportunities in our community. Last year, we pivoted to offer some virtual explorations, and we're finding that this is working really well with our schools. They're able to bring in, just like we're all here together through Zoom virtually, they're able to bring in virtual explorations and really bring to life some of what the children are learning in their classroom. Every exploration is tied directly to the curriculum standards in the classroom. So teachers are really truly building on what those academic components that they need to touch on during the school year. And then there's Season of Sharing. Season of Sharing is a time-tested safety net to help families in our 4-county region stay in their home. Funds can be used for rental assistance, utility bills, childcare, transportation, food vouchers, things that are needed to help families restore a sense of community. This campaign, it's been in place for over 20 years, and it's a partnership between the Community Foundation of Sarasota County, the Patterson Foundation, and the Herald Tribune. We've distributed more than $30 million to more than 35,000 families and individuals to get them back on their feet, thanks to this community's generosity. There are a network of over 60 human services agencies that are partners in Season of Sharing. They help individuals and families complete the applications, and all of the funds go directly to the utility or the landlord or the agency that individual or family needs to get that payment to. In 2020, we had over 3,250 grassroots donors, and many local foundations raised more than $3.7 million. That's a taste of kind of the overall philosophy that we embrace with our community impact team and our initiatives. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Angelica Hall. I'm pretty confident that almost everyone on this call has had a conversation or exchanged emails with her. And she oversees our grant making, and she's going to give you an overview of that and tell you a little bit about some of the competitive cycles that we have coming up. So thank you, and Angelica, take it away.
All right, thank you, Kirsten. So as Kirsten and Jay have touched on, about a quarter of our assets are in the form of field of interest funds, which are primarily legacy gifts that have been entrusted to the Community Foundation by our donors. These field of interest funds have different purposes. Some can be very general, like unrestricted funding, or some can be very specific. The purpose of these funds is really up to the donor and how they'd like that money to be expended over time. Our role with these funds then is to steward that money and make sure that that money is granted out to appropriate nonprofit organizations. So how do we do that? First, we need to know about what you need. So we need nonprofits to share their needs with us. We collect that information primarily through both the giving partner, but also primarily through our grant applications. Grant applications allow us to collect consistent and important information that can help us make an informed funding decision from these field of interest funds. When we look at grant applications, we then have the option to fund them or support that project. And when we make a grant to support a project, the grant that we make can come from one or more of these funds that we have here at the foundation. And when we make that grant, the purpose of the grant needs to fall within the purpose of the fund. So if a fund has been entrusted to us to go towards education, then we need to make sure that we are granting those dollars to education. And so that's a big role we play as kind of the matchmaker between the opportunities we see in the community and the funds that we have available here at the foundation. We can go to the next slide. Perfect. One of the ways that we collect grant applications from our community is through our open competitive grant cycles. These are all available for you to review on our website. You can see here, if you visit our website and click on the nonprofits tab and then look for grant opportunities, that will take you to a page that lists all of the opportunities available for this year. We identify our year by our fiscal year, so from July of one year until June of the following year. And we try to get those up and running every summer so that you can, go on, you can look at the opportunities we have available throughout the year, and you can make the best plan as to how to apply and how to move forward with your specific nonprofit. And finally, these are the eligibility requirements to receive a grant from the Community Foundation of Sarasota County. The first is that like we said, we do work with charitable organizations. So with that, we need to grant to organizations that are 501c3 public charities. If you have any questions about that, or if your organization is not a public charity, feel free to reach out to our staff and we'll look into kind of that guideline with you and kind of talk you through ways to try to work within that guideline. We also, as a community foundation, we serve a specific area. We are a community foundation. We identify ourselves by doing service work within this community. And we identify our community as the 4-county area of Sarasota, Manatee, Charlotte, or DeSoto counties. And our last requirement to receive a grant is an approved or current profile in the Giving Partner. The Giving Partner is a powerful, searchable online database with over 700 profiles of local nonprofits. And it's a great resource for us to learn more about your organization, for community members to learn more about your organization, or to share that information with donors. So while we're on the topic of the Giving Partner, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Renata Reeder, whose department heads up the Giving Partner and a lot of our work in the knowledge and equity area.
Thank you so much, Angelica. Hello, everyone. I'm Renata Reeder. I am the Vice President of Knowledge and Equity here at the Community Foundation of Sarasota County. New department, so happy to be here, and thank you so much for all of you for the warm welcome. In addition, we can go to the next slide, please. In addition to the Knowledge and Equity Department offering capacity building trainings and programs to the local nonprofit community, which I hope and I'm sure many of you have participated in the past, and I hope you will in the future. We're also will be using data going forward to better understand the community and their needs, to assess our reach, and also to measure the impacts of our investments and what our investments allow us to accomplish with our nonprofit partners in the community. I look forward to sharing more with you as the foundation continues to develop its data, diversity, equity, and inclusion offerings. Now, something that you may be more familiar with is the Giving Partner. And this is where I do my shameless plug, where I hope everyone has a profile. And if you don't have a profile, and if you do have a profile, I hope that everyone's profile is up to date. Like Angelica said, the Giving Partner is the online resource for informed charitable decisions that really connects philanthropy and community. The Giving Partner is a searchable database that houses over 700 profiles of 501c3 charitable organizations, and that covers Sarasota, Manatee, Charlotte, and DeSoto counties. So the Giving Partner is not only used by nonprofits to highlight their organizations and their work, but also to raise funds. One of my favorite facts from last year is that organizations raised over $70,000 in unrestricted funds utilizing the donate button. Local funders and donors also use the Giving Partner to find out more about nonprofit organizations and what they're working on. So you can find out more at www.thegivingpartner.org. Lastly, I'm really excited about this project or this challenge, the 2022 Giving Challenge. A 24-hour fundraising challenge. The next challenge is noon to noon, April 26th to 27th, 2022. Last year, we raised $19.1 million. Like last year, we're going to have prizes, matches, peer-to-peer campaigns, and other incentives available this year. We will also be offering a number of trainings leading up to the Giving Challenge so you all could capitalize and make this challenge the best year yet. Be sure you're subscribed to the nonprofit news and our website to stay tuned for more information on those trainings. And now I will turn it back over to Misha.
Thank you, Renata. A huge part of the Giving Challenge is storytelling. We know you guys work really hard on putting together your campaigns. You spend a lot of pre-work getting that ready. And that's incredibly important. The work every organization in this community does affects people. And we know people want to hear about how their neighbors and friends, and the people that they want to be neighbors and friends with, maybe, how they're making a difference. Our communications team plays that role, and we want to share your stories and work that demonstrate how the power of philanthropy really makes positive changes. We hope that that inspires additional giving, which is, again, a big part of the Giving Challenge. So our teammates here, Hunter Carpenter and Kimberly Adams, you'll encounter them if you haven't already in reviewing press releases about grant announcements and even finding more ways to weave your work into the larger tale of our community. We think that's really important, especially as so many new people are moving into our area. We really want to give a comprehensive view of who and what makes up our community. And then Kim, she translates stories into other forms, namely through events, virtual or otherwise. And these are events that we co-host with some nonprofits and privately with our donors. And they range from site tours and discussions to larger forums. So what is it that we are looking to understand? We really want you to consider the Community Foundation of Sarasota County your sounding board for what is important and what are some emerging issues among the people that you serve. Are there ways that we can help engage your work by visiting a program site or collaborating on storytelling videos, or maybe even bringing others to really get familiar with what you do? They might be passionate about the cause that you represent, but maybe not familiar yet with your organization. As Jay mentioned, we're all trying to figure out what version of COVID pandemic we are in, and it continues to change and evolve. But I think, like many of you, we used the last year to really figure out where were we strong, how could we affect the most change. And so while we will be attending other events, it's not going to be, I think, as widely as it has been before. So we want to remain open and accessible to the community and always paying attention to what's going on. So we will be out and about, but perhaps in different ways. Next slide. So when we are looking at events, we do support programs that through grant funding, as Angelica mentioned, but really our preference is to go beyond our support of singular one-off events. When we do look at these events, we consider those three elements there. Geography, we want to make sure we represent the larger area that we're serving through our gift making, and also audiences. And where is philanthropy's role in having a voice there, if at all? Some of the other ways that we find out about what you're doing is through strategic partnerships. So as Angelica mentioned, that is a grant request that is available throughout the year. The schedule has changed a little bit. This year it's 3 times a year, and it's available on our website, as Angelica mentioned. Strategic partnerships are really intended to expand our relationship with nonprofits and help us build toward long-term supportive relationships. So I think that's the best way to think about them. We do understand, though, that opportunities come up, and we're open to learning about new programs and events. And we may even attend certain programs and events if we're not sponsoring at a higher level. So we do still want to be engaged and committed with you. If you do have some of those new opportunities come up, you can always send invitations to us. Please remember, we only need one invitation for the Community Foundation. So if you're looking for a little bit of cost savings, just make sure that there is one coming our way. or you can also email us to the address that's on the screen there. One thing that I think is very important to know is that we do not support golf tournaments, run walks, broad festivals, or plant or bake sales. So what we're really looking for is an opportunity to connect deeply with your mission. So back to storytelling. Here on the screen are some recent stories of impact. I pulled these from our website. We are constantly updating, sharing all of the good work that you're doing. Every time there is a grant that's gone out, an announcement that's there, that's a chance for us to share what you're doing in the community. So some of these go to news clips, press releases. They might go to your own individual nonprofit website or YouTube channels, or even your social media posts. We like to look at the full cycle of how our support is being able to help with your work. So that doesn't mean just a press release at the beginning and a grant report at the end. Of course, we do want to demonstrate the trust that donors have given the Community Foundation through the recognition of their gifts. And that is important, but we also want to keep that conversation really going on all year long. And so when you are communicating with Hunter, most often you might be asked sometimes to perhaps write a guest blog or find a way to share your work in a different way. And that's really important because we use these stories of support when we're considering our own donor communications, where we update them on the latest happenings in the community. And our entire team is constantly reviewing these stories of impact. So these are some basic communication tips. And I think they're all just pretty important. You know, make sure these same announcements are on your website too. We always want to be able to link back to you and really make sure your stories are at the forefront. So once you have it on your channels, please add to your social channels, post regularly. Updates are great, like I said. Photos and videos, I think we all know, are what grabs people's attention. But I would say the number one tip, if you have a staff member or volunteer who's managing your website or social media really, is to tag us. There is a lot of differences in the algorithms that control social media. So if you tag us, that's another way for us to see your work in action. Those are our channels there. Oh, did not realize we were at the end. That's okay. Just overall, I wanted to say that I hope you've heard through our talk today that each person can make a difference. And that goes from the donor to the individuals working for nonprofits and to the people who are being helped. And that's really our philosophy at the Community Foundation, so that each of us plays a role in improving our community for everyone who calls it home. And with that, we can open up for questions. And I'm going to ask Kim, who's been quietly in the background, if you had anything that came through. Nothing.
Doesn't look like it. Yeah, nothing.
All right. Well, as if you have questions that come up or you need a little bit more detail than the overviews that we gave today, all of our on our website, cfsarasota.org, you can find a staff listing all with direct emails and phone line numbers. We're here. We want to be your partner, and we're very glad to get to work with everyone. Thank you. Oh,
I know the answer to that question. Oh, she's got it.
there is a question that just came in. Do we serve Hardee County? And I'm going to give that over to Kirsten. I would say indirectly.
Yeah, I would say it depends where exactly in Harding County it is, and it depends on the program that you're looking and where the fund comes from. So if you want to ask a more specific question, I'd be happy to take that, or you can contact us directly with the specifics.
Okay. And there's some nice comments. Thank you. I hope we answered your questions. But again, as always, if anything comes up, reach us, and we're here to help. So thank you.